Well, hello everybody and welcome. You have tuned into episode number 439 of Linux in the Ham Shack. This is our deep dive episode, and this one will take a little bit of a different course because we're going to be talking about an upcoming conference, one that we have mentioned and actually had an interview on several years ago, but not in quite some time. So, let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do that, we'll introduce ourselves, the usual cast of characters. I'm Russ, K5TUX. Bill, NE4RD, is on assignment tonight, but we do have
Cheryl, W5MOO.
Yes, and we also have from Ohio Linux Fest, the thing we're going to be talking about tonight, Beth Lynn Eicher, one of the longtime organizers of OLF. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and unfortunately I do not have a cool hammers handle. So you'll have to forgive me. But I will get around to having my license done whenever I get to that pile of round toots.
Yeah, that's all right. We have talked with many people who don't yet have their license, and that's okay because that just means you're a ham in the making. So, but we're not really here to talk about ham. Unless, of course, it comes up in the discussion of OLF. I don't know if you guys are going to have like a ham track or something like Self does, but we'll get around to all of that. Let's start at the beginning and talk about the foundations of OLF, when it started and all of that, and what the basic idea behind the Ohio Linux Fest is. I mean, I know all Linux conferences and open source conferences have a same basic goal in mind, but tell us a little bit about the origins of OLF.
Fantastic, Russ. Great question about, oh goodness, now 19 years ago, that it was a dream to bring really just about everybody that was a mover and shaker in Linux and free software into Ohio and invite everyone who was crazy enough to drive in to participate and just go about the business of having what was billed as an interlug gathering. We were so happy to have also looked up and noticed that some folks outside of Bellingham, Washington had a successful event also in 2003 called Linux Fest Northwest, and we were like, wow, Linux Fest, that sounds like a pretty cool word to us and described what we were trying to do. So we took it, we ran with it, and I suppose you could say the rest is history. But all in all, people through the years have come to know us as OLF, and we're just so happy to still be around, to still be relevant, and to be back late this fall to bring to folks once again a live in-person show for folks who want to know, of course, what is new in free software.
So back in the early days, you mentioned LUGs, or Linux Users Groups, and you had probably several that were in the Columbus and greater Columbus area that were where people participated and talked about Linux and using it and its upcoming features and things, and we used to do the same here as well, and they used to proliferate pretty far and wide, but they seem to have dried up. Have Linux Users Groups gone away in your area? Or do they still exist, or is everything sort of reduced to conferences when those can happen?
Well, good question. The Linux user group that started off was actually outside of Canton and thought that a central location would be a great place to bring people in with the energy around OSU. Quickly, other lugs caught on to the notion, all from around the state, and it definitely wanted to jump on the bandwagon. But it was a matter of the paradigm of things being more than just Linux as to why I feel that the same sentiment that you were feeling, that lugs have died down. user groups have not died down. There's definitely many special interest groups that have been born during this pandemic to fill little niches of different projects that involve free software or free culture that we all want to get involved with. And that's where I see the most energy coming from. When I first encountered a Linux users group, I was there specifically to get started with Linux. But now that we've grown up together with Linux, we all want to play with new and emerging and perhaps re-emerging technologies to continue to celebrate each other's freedom and choices and the ability to adapt and share alike with other like-minded individuals. And that's where I see a lot of the user group activity happening now.
So maybe you could go back to what you recall from the early days of OLF and then look at the last full-fledged one before conferences sort of went away due to the global pandemic, and maybe tell us what you see, do a little compare and contrast to the very first OLF to the last one that happened before everything kind of went away. How has it become different? Has its focus shifted? Tell us about like attendance and things like that. Whatever you can remember that's different or interesting between and how it's evolved over the last 20 something years.
I think that in a way we're going back to our roots in 2021, but in 2003 it was a single track sort of operation hosted out of Ohio State University, where there really was the movers and shakers of free and open source software within a reasonable driving distance of Columbus, Ohio, and there was a talk about Linux terminal server project, and then there was a talk from one of the founders of Mozilla that definitely come to mind from year one, but it seemed to be something for everyone, but everybody was gathered in one room, and everybody had to know for sure that they were coming there well in advance and take it seriously and mark it in their calendars and be there. Because, of course, being a single track and being in a good-sized auditorium in the university, the amount of options were quite limited as to how you were able to pull it off at very minimal to no cost. So it entailed being very, very, very watchful to make sure that you didn't overbook the seats. So I believe that it was under 150 in capacity in that auditorium. And for that very reason, I almost didn't go because I almost didn't make the RSVP cutoff. Now, the way things were going in 2019, we were in the hundreds, if not almost approaching 1,000. We were in a convention center hotel. We had multiple concurrent tracks going on. It was still the movers and shakers of free software. There was still something for everyone, but it didn't have as much of a homey feel to it, just because we were so scattered out between several rooms that it was very possible that you didn't get a chance to connect it with everybody, or just plain flat out did not notice that your friend had attended the entire conference until it was time for the after reception. Oh, with this future paradigm, what we have is the idea of one main stage track where we'll book our most popular talks, as well as one breakout track to allow for properly socially distancing all of the spaces, and while continuing to maintain the community feel.
All right, very good. So when it comes to the current iteration of OLF, when do you think it sort of changed from, a group of lugs getting together in a single track format to what I would guess you would consider a full-blown conference? When was that transition? How long into the development of it?
It somewhat happened as an emergency, really, because what we needed to execute on is a 3-track conference, which we thought we had booked the space for gratis at Ohio State, but it was not at all actually secured due to some volunteer oopses, which led us to go ahead and have to be serious about collecting revenue and explore what sort of function spaces would be able to accommodate the type of crowd that we were expecting. So that's what put us in the Hyatt Regency Columbus, and it's really been a great fit for our community all these years, and that's why we keep coming back to that space.
Well, that, and it's always better or easier to get into a space you've been established at, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about 2020 before we get into the current conference, the one that's coming up in a couple of months, or less than a couple of months, actually. What did you guys do last year to kind of keep the ball rolling and keep interest in OLF when there couldn't actually be a conference held?
For one, we were already talking about expanding the Olf brand for just some of the same reasons that we've already talked about, with user groups transforming into special interests rather than being so focused on Linux specific issues. So we wanted to create that sort of mind space and paradigm without giving up the notion of the same sorts of user group roots and freedom values that we have already well established through just plain behaving the way that we do and conducting business the way that we do, but also going through the trouble of becoming a 501c3 nonprofit. Moreover, when we went virtual, we wanted to already distance ourselves from the notion that we were just Ohio or just Ohio people, which is definitely not true even from year one. So we took the opportunity to rebrand as OLF Conference to mean Open Libra Free, or if you prefer to say Ohio Linux Fest, I will not correct you. Both are right. Both are true. We will continue to celebrate the freedoms that we've all been guaranteed in the GNU Manifesto, because that's the way that I continue to see everything continuing to evolve. So I'm pretty happy about that sort of past us choice that set us up for our 2020 pivot to the virtual space. We were thinking about proceeding on whenever we were still in denial early on in 2020. Oh, well, it couldn't possibly be that bad. And it was. So, yeah, we were able to rebook our arrangements with the Hyatt without any sort of loss. However, we definitely couldn't see a year without any classic Olaf fun. So it really took us as a team to come together and really try to define our values and define what makes us special, and what continues to make us special is really our community and our contacts that will continue to enable us to reach out to the movers and shakers in free software. So that's what we were able to do on the online platform, being able to stream out, being able to welcome our almost perennial guest of honor, John Mad Dog Hall, to come in and give us a talk, and to also have him invite his friend Red Hat founder Bob Young into the party. It was just such a fun show to do, and I am really, really, really glad that we did it to continue the conversation of free software.
All right, fantastic. So now let's get to this year. Let's get into the meat of the matter and talk about OLF Open Libre Free Conference 2021, which you've moved into December. And if you want to talk about the move into December, you can certainly do that. But so what's the crux? What's the format of the show this year? As far as the core educational opportunities, I assume there's going to be lots of different activities to participate in, and we can get to some of the maybe extracurriculars later. But like, what kind of speakers do you have? What kind of tracks do you have, and things like that? What's good at OLF this year?
So we have quite the show, but first I'll start by answering, I suppose, the easiest question about, like, why pushing all the way back to December. We decided to push back all the way to December in hopes of a healthier world, a healthier America, where we would be able to join together from people from multiple states to travel. And I sometimes this pandemic moves time both fast and slow, that you have to remember that even if you received 2 doses of your favorite brand of vaccine back in May, you could not enter Ohio unless you lived there. Now, could not means different things to different people. So, like, of course, people who had legitimate reasons in which to pass through Ohio, are one thing, but it's another thing to just enjoy a leisure vacation in a state that is not your own, which it was the case up until then. So once that had opened, we saw other restrictions open, such as the entire building couldn't have more than 300 people in attendance at any given time for any given reason. So if another event had booked for our weekend in the same hotel, then that would mean that we would share the 300 quota with another event. So we decided to keep things responsible by restricting the number of attendees that could come and physically be there. Yet we continue to really, really, really hope that for crying out loud, that people would get their vaccines and do the right thing for humanity, as well as providing a safe environment that wasn't too late in the year, because of course we are sensitive to the fact that it will be Hanukkah season that particular week, and people will be giving up perhaps the opportunity to go to a holiday block party or something along those lines to attend OLF at Columbus, Ohio on December 4th and 5th. But we just wanted to make sure that it would be a safe environment for all, and safety has always been the top of mind for us.
Will OLF have a virtual component as well as an on-site component? And if that's the case, will they be the same? Will everyone have access to the same information, same tracks and so forth, or will they be different?
What we are endeavoring to do is a mainstream track where we will YouTube live as a fairly professionally produced endeavor, where we've partnered with the convention center's AV staff to make sure that could happen with free software, and that's something that I'm looking forward to making sure that we accomplish to live stream it directly to YouTube, as well as a breakout track where we're trying to iron out the details how to make the breakout track also be accessible to the outside world who cannot make it in physical person. But we're very, very excited about that. Parts of the program that we regret we will not be able to, in fact, live stream are the professional training. That's the OLFI program, because we felt that it would be really important to bring it back down to the in-person sort of format, because those are meant to be hyper-focused, multi-hour, in training tutorials where you walk through details intensely and want to be able to ask an instructor questions while they can literally look over your shoulder rather than zooming, because quite honestly, there's some people who are just plain fed up with zooming. Some people are also in the situation where they are not able to even fathom coming to an in-person event, despite the fact that we do require everyone to be vaccinated. I understand that is a very personal decision, as well as whether or not you can physically make the travel.
So for those folks who actually do make travel and get to participate in OLF as an in-person event, what are you doing outside of the educational tracks? Will there be like a hallway track, birds of a feathers at night, things like that? A vendor event? Will there be an expo of some kind?
Yeah, we are just wrapping up signing on our exhibitors. If you're interested, I'd love to hear from you, but we need to hear from you quickly to secure your table. Interestingly enough, that was something that they missed from the in-person experience, to be able to reach out to the exhibitors and get to see what is new and innovative in industry. So I'm very excited to bring that back once again. It does not 100% cover the cost of the show, but it does help so much. And we very much love our sponsors, especially the first one who had signed with us to be a partner level sponsor. That would be the Linux Professional Institute. They've been just so amazing to us over the years.
All right. Do you guys have anything fun planned for the event? After parties, anything like that? Cool stuff that people who get to show up in person might be interested in participating in?
Yeah. I forgot to say that, yes, of course, we're bringing back the Birds of a Feather. We're going to be able to do that as an in-person function, and I'm very, very pleased to be able to do that, because it was really about making sure that we could get people together in the same room to have informal discussions, and that might be a little cumbersome to bring back in the virtual format participants, but we're still brainstorming on specifically that. We do hope to have some parties. So we've had a traditional happy hour event on Friday to introduce our sponsors to our community and get people mingling and at least saying hi and thank you for sponsoring. So take a look for that, as well as a way to just wrap up and say goodbye to everybody on Saturday night. Those types of things, just being able to gather around are just so very important.
We should probably let you mention some of the folks who, well, before we get into mentioning sponsors and stuff, what kind of things, if any, are you looking for in the realm of volunteerism? Are you accepting donations from people who just want to make a private contribution to the show? And do you need any help as far as putting on the show or staffing or anything like that before it gets rolling?
Yes. We do have a pay what you would like online only registration. You can pay the bare minimum of the registration for the in-person of $20. You could choose to pay a little more to show your appreciation. You could sign up for the supporter pass, which would give you lunch for the 2 days. That would be a highly excellent way to say thanks. And as you register, you can choose to buy a t-shirt, and you can choose to make a separate donation contribution. We do have a crowdfunding partnership with the Linux Foundation, and I haven't really pushed it out yet, but that might be some way that people would be able to contribute to us if they want to give us money, but for whatever reason they do not want to register for the show as an online participant or an in-person participant, but would like to contribute to let us know that they are happy that we exist. We also need volunteers. Volunteers would be essential in any year for the purposes of making sure that people check in and pick up their badge and pick up the t-shirt if they ordered one, and feel welcomed and perhaps buy a raffle ticket. But all of that logistics is still going to be happening, albeit with less capacity as we had in 2019, but it's still a very important thing because we are doing this in a city with a mask mandate, so we're going to need to make sure that everybody in our space, of course, is compliant with that, compliant with our ask that everybody comes fully vaccinated, and is truly here to engage positively in the conversation of free software. There are other tasks that would perhaps be overlooked by somebody who wasn't running the show, like where we're going to need somebody to make sure that the tutorials receive power Friday morning. And those are the types of tasks that we very much appreciate to be a part of the overall experience, as well as people who are virtually only. Believe it or not, we are in need of people who are virtual only volunteers to make sure that the community conversation over there is great. Moreover, we are still going to have a show raffle, but we're going to move that to an online format so that people, no matter where they are, can participate. So I'm pretty excited about going in that new direction.
All right, very good. So let's get down to some brass tacks then, I guess. Let's talk about sponsors and speakers. You can name the good ones, the best ones, or you can name all of them or whatever, but who can we expect to see for vendors, sponsors, and speakers at the show this year?
So for the speakers, we have some amazing new keynotes. We got Mark Phillips from more of the government space with Raytheon, talking about where is the secret source, and that will be about how free software is indeed a thing in government space, and specifically classified government space. We also have Kate Stewart. She's from the Linux Foundation, and she'll be talking about hobbyist code going to Mars. That's just thrilling, and it brings home brings to out of home the notion that we are not just Linux anymore, but we are apparently interstellar with our proliferation of free software. So I'm very, very, very excited about that. And of course we'll have John Magdog Hall back again. What's he barking about this time? They did it again. Yes. He's pretty hopping upset about Microsoft's latest release of Windows product, and he's hoping that folks will perhaps consider seeing the light and trying the free software desktop of and really any of the Linux distributions at this time, because it would be a real shame to watch such great hardware go to landfills for one thing, but it's just a higher quality experience, which I'm sure most of your audience might be keen on agreeing with me on that.
Well, for sure, we definitely want to promote Linux wherever possible and open source wherever possible, even if you have to do the unthinkable and run it on Windows. But what about sponsors? Tell us who's supporting your show this year and who people might be able to interact with if they get there on site.
First, I wanted to thank LPI again as our first partner sponsor, and we're just so thrilled to have them back, and their support of us has been phenomenal. And I also wanted to thank Oracle, who was also coming back again, but their support is going to have to be completely virtual because they are in a situation where they cannot have any of their employees participate in live shows without a virtual option. Therefore, we're pleased to have them on board with their MySQL community manager, David Stokes, talking about, of course, MySQL. So there's that afoot. And we do have some other sponsors lined up, but some of these details are still unfolding.
All right, that's all right. We'll definitely let people know where they can find that information, and this is probably actually a good spot to do that. So if you want to tell everyone where they can go to find out more about the Open Libre Free Conference and get tickets, become a sponsor perhaps, donate, become a volunteer, or just get any information about OLF, where does one go to do that?
olfconference.org.
All right, that's great. Is there an email address that you want to let anyone know that might have questions or anything like that, or can all of that information be found on the website?
That would be info@ohiolinux.org.
All right, straightforward enough. So before we get out of here, Cheryl's been nice and quiet in the background there. Do you have any questions for Beth Lynn that you want to ask that I didn't touch on?
I actually think you pretty well hit everything, so...
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. We're trying to get people interested and ready, set, go to participate in OLF this year. I wish we could do it. We're gonna sort of be at OLF on the periphery when we get there, basically as the show winds up. But unfortunately, the timing is not going to work out for us. But we'd love to do it. And if nothing else, maybe we can plan to be at OLF 2022. But usually what we do when we have an interview, when someone's talking about something, we ask them to wrap up by letting us know if there's anything we forgot to ask you about, or if there's some part of the show that you want to touch on that we didn't ask you about.
Sure, yeah. Go ahead and make your travel arrangements. We have a hotel block at the Hyatt Regency Columbus. If you would like to stay elsewhere, it won't hurt us. But it's something that we are proud that we were able to bring a discount rate to anybody who'd be interested in it. There's going to be, for folks that want to just come in locally, there are contact-free parking options within the same building, so that you can come and enjoy the day on your own terms in a way that will be comfortable and safe to you.
All right, and one more thing I just thought of that I want to ask before we wrap up here. The virtual component of the show, you said was going to be done via YouTube. Is it going to be semi-live, or is it pre-recorded? Will people be able to interact via like text chat or anything like that? Or is it just going to be streaming video?
Well, we will have the streaming video. And last year we opened up Slack, and pun intended, we got some slack for using Slack because Slack is not free software, but neither is the YouTube chat. We're considering doing that anyway. We are going to be soliciting a volunteer to be able to manage the live chat in YouTube should we go that direction, because I've come to appreciate that whenever you open a door, you have to consider moderation, especially when you are on the internet where people might feel as though that they are anonymous. Nobody's truly anonymous online, but a lot of people seem to think that way. So there's that. As far as one more thing that I can think of that I would like to tell your audience, that I know that the Dayton Handvention is something that's near and dear to some of your audience. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. It's near and dear to us too. We've been planning to go back to Dayton as soon as they decide to hold the show again, and we're hoping 2022 is that date. We're actually booked into hotels and everything. And Dawn, one of our listeners who's in the live chat tonight, said while he was listening to you talk about Ohio, he booked his hotel for Hamvention as well.
Well, fantastic, and we would very much appreciate if you or anyone from your audience could help connect us to them, because we know how lonely it feels to being a live show producer and expect the literal studio audience and not necessarily know whether or not anybody is on the other side of the screen. And it's something that even your big late night talk show hosts will talk about, that it definitely had a different flow, a different feel to it, and it was something that we very, very dearly missed of having a live audience. So we're so sympathetic to anybody else who is in technology in the do-it-yourself sort of minefield to bring you up to the notion that you would be keen to try free software. So if you could please connect us to the folks who run the Dayton Hamvention to see if that there was some way that we could collaborate, that would be particularly spectacular. I also wanted to mention that we are collaborating with another such show that really did want to be in person this year, but couldn't. It's called Maker X of Columbus, Ohio. So we're very thrilled to be able to bring some live and in-person experiences to their audience, just to make it so that it is that some elements of the community that they have come and learned to love as well.
All right. Well, we will do that. We have mentioned OLF at Hamvention when we've been there for sure. We've done it sort of informally, but we'll definitely try and get that out there. We've even heard from people who have attended both events, and that's really cool. And if Hamvention has a spot for like nonprofits and stuff like they usually do, they might reach out to you, or maybe we can talk to somebody and have them reach out to you about having a presence at Hamvention to get that out. But I mean, your goal and ours is pretty much the same, and we spend our time at Hamvention talking about open source and Linux and all the things that you do at OLF as well. So we just have a ham radio focus, and we tend to do a little bit better there. So with that, I guess we should go ahead and wrap this up, unless there's anything else you want to finish with. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and let you go and get on with your evening, and hope everybody will do their best to attend OLF, whether in person or virtually, and participate in all the great things you've got going on.
Thank you so much.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and move on. We do have some feedback we need to get to, but thanks once again, Beth Lynn Eicher of the Open Libre Free Conference. I guess I'm going to start calling it that from now on instead of Ohio Linux Fest, even though I've been told that both are synonymous and equally valid, but I sort of like the rebranding. It'll do you well, I think, going forward to make the idea of the conference a little more global. So thanks once again for being here. Hope you have a great night.
Thanks, Russ. I hope everyone can join us wherever you are, or in Columbus, Ohio, December 3rd and 4th at the Hyatt Regency Columbus, or on the YouTube near you. OLF Conference. Thank you so much.
Perfect way to wrap that up. But before we close out this episode, we should go ahead and get to the feedback we've got here. And Cheryl, why don't you go ahead and read this feedback from Gene, since you haven't had a chance to do anything for the last 35 minutes.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
So a few weeks ago, the challenge was sent out for everybody to send us an email letting us know what new or interesting things you were doing with open hardware and software. So this message came from Gene, BX8AAD, and he said, "Dear Russ, Cheryl, and Bill, the Chinese, let me start that over again. Dear Cheryl, Russ, Cheryl, and Bill, the challenge this week was send us an email letting us know new and interesting things you're doing with open hardware and software. Well, the Chinese typing method I teach here is called kanji, which is open source. According to Wikipedia, quote unquote, the input method was invented in 1976 by Chu Bongfu. Chu Bongfu released the patent for kanji in 1982 as he thought the method should belong to Chinese cultural heritage. Therefore, kanji has become open source software and is on every computer system that supports traditional Chinese characters, and it's been extended so that kanji is compatible with the simplified Chinese character set. I'm currently working on a new typing tutor program in Python that will allow the user to learn and practice typing in Chinese using either the traditional character set, which is otherwise known as Big 5, or the simplified character set, which is GB 2312. If it ever becomes polished enough for release to the general public, I will release it as open source software. 73 and Zaijian, or goodbye, Gene, BX8AAD.
All right, very cool. Thanks, Gene, for doing that, for actually following up on our challenge and telling us what cool things you're doing with open source. That's really neat. And we did actually get a chance to meet Gene. He is an American, but he's living in Taiwan and has for a long time. He's, missionary, I guess, technically over there, and has been doing a lot to educate the people in Taiwan and does a lot with language. So that's really cool. Thanks, Gene, BX8AAD, and I forget what your American call sign is, but that's really neat. And we'll be looking for your general public open source release when you get it polished. So moving on, we have an email from Rich, KJ7UIP. It says, "Hi, Bill," because this just went to Bill, but we're going to read it anyway. Haha. "Just a quick note to let you know there are folks out there that listen to Linux and the Ham Shack podcast that don't always call in or ask questions, except you've done it now, so." But I do want to say I really appreciate your content, expertise, and humor. As a user of Linux and finally accomplished my bucket list item of becoming a licensed ham, your content has helped me tremendously, and I really like your call sign. Hey, maybe that's a topic for one of your podcasts. Woo! Call sign breakdown. I appreciate you, bro. 7-3. Rich, KJ7UIP. So thanks, Rich. Even though you sent that to Bill only, we got to read it. Ha. And all right, so let's move on. We've got a comment on episode 431, which was our SDR++ deep dive. This comes from Rich, K9 Alpha Oscar. He says, "A few further comments on the SDR Play SDR Duo and Linrad discussion. I discovered an application called RSP Duo EME. This is a Windows application that interfaces with the RSP Duo and allows for a phase measurement to do a calibration on the two streams to get them coherent. It was designed to feed MAP65, and it does that well, but the output streams can also feed Linrad. If you set it up this way, then you have adaptive polarization dual-channel receive in Linrad. The RSP Duo EME app is built for Windows, but the program's author shared that it was written in an environment that should make porting to Linux easy, though he was not looking to do that himself. Perhaps one of our interested listeners might have a shot at getting this application going on Linux. If that was done, we would have an all-Linux solution to adaptive dual-channel reception using the SDR Duo. I've not had luck with the Windows version of Linrad and any of my SDR Play devices, even though it is supposed to be able to use the SDR Play API like Linrad in Linux does." And that was from Rich, K9AO. So thanks, Rich, for emailing us. And there's a lot of technical stuff in there, but maybe we put it out and somebody who wants to try and develop that for Linux using whatever build environment was originally used might give this a shot. I don't know. And we have some comments on some YouTube videos we put up, Bill's install videos, and I'll let Cheryl go ahead and read these out.
Okay. So W6BZY commented and said that the AUR package pages that all CQR log builds were broken on September 17th. The maintainer confirmed that this was the case, and he sent a message, quote-unquote, upstream for help. When your second video came out using the Unarch distro, I shuddered, knowing this problem was going to raise its ugly head. Nate's random video comment was, I'm sitting here watching someone do distro's basic QA job for them.
Yeah, that was in reference to Bill actually doing an install and the problems that always crop up with CQR log and its inability to link properly with MySQL's backend because someone apparently doesn't know how to maintain a package properly. So Bill has fixed that in the distribution that we released, the Linux and the Ham Shack build of Ubuntu. So if you want to install our release, you don't have to worry about that, and you don't have to worry about us doing someone else's QA job because it's already been done. And that brings us down to the end of the feedback, and that brings us down to the end of the show. So we want to thank everybody who listens to the show and supports us financially and helps keep the lights on. We really appreciate you. Just the downloads is all we really need because that's what keeps us going. And to hear that we're actually making a difference and getting people interested and, in fact, licensed is always good to hear. So if you have feedback for us, please send it to us. The information is in the show's outro. And I think that is it. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up. This has been episode number 439 of Linux in the Ham Shack. And for the On Assignment Bill, NE4RD, I'm Russ, K5TUX.
I'm Cheryl, W5MOO.
And Bill would say 7-3 here. So 7-3.